This is a video I've wanted to do for a while. So why would I wear Carolina for this? And I've got the old third here and then their current, see the double flag and the single flag? This is actually a tropical storm warning flag. So they were the Carolina tropical storms when they wore this. Didn't know that, did you? That's why they went to the double flag, because that's a hurricane. Hurricane warning. So good GM, bad GM. And this is, again, partly because I'm part of the Canuck fandom, right? And there are no fans that are more divided, I think, on whether a GM's good or bad than the Vancouver Canuck fandom. You have the Benning Bros and the Fire Benning group. And every day there's an argument. Every single day. It feels like there's every single day. You can get up on a Sunday in August and go, wait, what are they arguing about? Oh my God, they're talking about this Berchi contract? Holy, like, there's always something to argue about. Always. Because people will believe good GM, bad GM. So yeah, I'm using the panic index because it's similar to me. And really, I know it happens in all fan bases. I know with Kyle Dubas, there are those who love Dubas's work with Toronto and think they're building in the right direction, and there are those who think he's in over his head. Mark Bergevin, mention Bergevin, and to any Montreal fan, you will get two different reactions. Either one of the guy's great, or I don't know how he still has a job. Tree living in Calgary. What's the opinions on that? Now, Ken Holland is lucky. He's relatively new. And when a GM is relatively new, I think you get that grace period. And for Holland, since he has those cups on his resume from Detroit, oh, right. But people will say, well, yeah, but he was handed that team by Alex Davillano, which is the first rule on this. I remember Brian Burke winning the Stanley Cup with Anaheim, and people talk about how well he did, although there were those that said he didn't get there that long before they won the Stanley Cup. That team wasn't created by him. And I remember having that argument with him in Vancouver, which was, well, Burke's done a good job as GM, but it's still basically the team Pat Quinn put together. And then Nonis, he made the Luongo trade, but other than that, it was still Burke's team. So there's always that argument about a GM, and you're going to get that. Now, I'm wearing Carolina because Don Waddell, at the time Carolina signed him, I thought that was crazy. I thought, well, Waddell, with his record in Atlanta, I'm not sure why, and yet it's worked out really well. It has absolutely worked out really well, and I was 110% wrong on that one, which is amazing because you can't have more than 100%. So, because it's out of 100, so check it out. It's math. Look up Scott Steiner. So, good GM, bad GM, it's funny because you will get the arguments on both sides. So, here we have stuff that should tell you whether or not a GM's good. Team has a good record. If you believe the GM is good, you go, yep. See, they're first in the league, they're top 10 in the league, whatever it is. Look at how well they're playing this year. That's great. If you think they're a bad GM, you'll say, it's despite the GM. I mean, really, it's not the team he put together. It was the guy that set him up, that put that team together. And he was really kind of lucky. There's no way when this team came into camp, he thought they were going to be very good. And really, if you look at so-and-so who's gone to that team, they're having a really good time. So, I understand their record's good, but it's not real. And they're going to get exposed in the playoffs, right? Scouting. Good GM. Yeah, he listens to his scouts, and, he's got this really good relationship with the scouting department. And look at these draft picks that he gets. They're all pretty good. But if you believe the GM is bad, you're going to say, well, he did well at the draft, but it's only because of the scouting department. It's not that he has a brain. In fact, the guy he wanted to sign was an idiot. So, really, I mean, it's kind of proof. And it's like, well, where did you hear that? Well, I heard it on the internet because Bill reported that the guy he wanted to draft was right, but he didn't end up drafting that player. Well, that's not the point. If you didn't have this other guy in his ear, then, we would have a terrible team, right? So that's your difference between your good GM and your bad GM. Coaching. So, and again, this depends on the record, right? So let's just say the team's doing well. Good GM, it's a smart GM. Stood by his coach. They're doing really well. And they've got a good relationship. The relationship between the coach and the GM is so good. Bad GM, the only reason he still has a job is because that coach is behind the bench. That coach gets wins out of them despite the team that he's handed by the general manager. I guarantee you he is cursing and swearing every time he looks at the lineup card And he thinks, how in the world am I going to put a team on the ice that's going to win this game? And then he does it because he's a brilliant coach, but he's got an idiot for a boss. So there's that. And then if the team if the team has a bad record, but you believe it's a good GM, well, it's really the coach. The GM gives him everything. He can only give him so much. It's not like he's behind the bench. And if you're saying that the bad record is on the GM, not the coach, you're going to say, well, yeah, their record stinks since so and so took over, but look at the team that the GM gave him. He can't work with that. That's just awful. He's a great coach, but what a lousy boss he has. Trades. I love trades because at the time trades are made, we'll all say good deal, bad deal, everything like that. And I've really tempered that over the last few years. When a trade happens, I'll say I'm leaning towards it being, because I've seen too many trades where I've looked back at them and said, actually, no, that was a pretty good deal. And I know Benning in Vancouver doesn't get credit for the good trades. He just gets raked over the coals for the bad ones. And I know that happens with Toronto. I know that happens with every Canadian location where fans, and I think that sports fans in general, I don't think this is even just a hockey thing. And I've noticed this over the years, and I've thought it's fascinating, where you see a player on another team. You may not see him very often, so you may not see the rough edges in a player's game. But you go, wow, that guy's really good. I really like him. So I hope we can trade for him. This guy we've got, he's a bum. He's terrible. And again, I know this happens in football, it happens in baseball, it happens everywhere. And if we can just get that guy, he's going to be great. And then you look back at those proposals or those threads, those comments 4 years down the road, and you go, wow, I don't know what they were seeing. But there's a belief that every team's got a really good GM except mine. Every GM in this league is really good. Our GM sucks. So when trades happen, a good GM, if the trade goes bad, they say, well, he didn't know at the time what was going to happen. That guy got hurt. That wasn't his fault. But if it's a bad GM and a trade goes bad, they go, see, lousy GM. But if it's a good trade, they will say, yeah, that trade worked out well. I don't believe in the GM. I think that was lucky. There was a lot of luck involved. There's no way he knew what was going to happen. And with a GM that you believe the GM is good, if the trade works out badly, you go, well, he didn't know. But if it works out well, you go, see, he's brilliant. Told you he's brilliant. Now, free agents is, of course, a big lightning rod right now, right? Because you've got the free agent period and winners and losers and which teams didn't win in free agency and which teams won in free agency. And as fans, we go, man, we've got to improve. Free agency is going to make everything great. Even though it's been shown, Stanley Cup winners, do they win in free agency? Not usually. Usually it's a team that's built really well. If your team needs to use free agency to fix major holes in the lineup, you're probably not winning the following Stanley Cup. That's just the way that works. Now, if they work and they don't, what's funny is if you believe in the general manager, when they work, you go, brilliant. When they don't work, you go, well, he didn't know. He was coming off of a good year. We signed him, and it didn't work out. If you think he's a bad GM, if the free agency, if that signing works out, you say, well, yeah, that free agent was pretty good, but they've got him on the wrong line. But really, he didn't take as much money as he could have from that other team. Well, I don't know. I don't really want to give him credit on that signing, but, and when it doesn't work out, then I'll criticize that signing into the ground. That signing was absolutely awful. That was all terrible. Everything that they did was terrible. Every single move ever was terrible. And I find it weird because I don't have a GM I feel that way about. I don't have one that I look at and say every move they've made is ridiculous or every move they've made is fantastic. That's just not how general managing works. Goaltending is one of the funny parts. So if you believe it's a good GM, you go, this goaltending, pretty good goaltending. This general manager knew how to put together the goaltenders, and the goaltending coach is pretty good because the GM hired the right guy. Bad GM, the only thing saving his ass is the goaltending. That's it. If it wasn't for the goaltending, he's out of here. And he's lucky he's got a really good goaltending coach. And I find it really funny when a bad GM has a team with a good record. And I'm saying bad GM as in that's the opinion. They have a good record, good staff, good coach, and things are working relatively well. They go, yeah, but he's still a crap GM. But how did he get all this staff? Oh, well, because the owner. Yeah, I should add owner to this too. I'll put owner at the bottom because that's the other part too, right? That's the other part of the conversation that we get into. Stanley Cup, good GM? oh, yeah, no, he put this team together. This was great. This was fantastic. But if you don't believe in the GM, and I could see this maybe with Julian Brisebois in Tampa. I could see this argument. I'm not saying I've seen it online, but I could see the argument of, well, yes, they won the Stanley Cup, and yeah, he added a couple of guys at the deadline, but it's still Steve Yzerman's team. Yzerman built that team. So he deserves, I guess, a little bit of credit, but what did he really do? What did he really do? I mean, really. He didn't really do a whole lot. He just made a couple of pretty good trades. But now they're screwed under the cap, right? So since they're screwed under the cap, clearly he's not managing it as well as Yzerman did. Yzerman got out just before they hit the apocalypse with free agency and with their cap situation. Sort of like Cheka walking away from Arizona. Like, what's our cap situation for next year? I'm gonna quit. I'm being hired by EA Games. I'm gonna be a developer. So yeah. A good GM, you look at the Stanley Cup and you go, that's a validation. If you don't believe in the GM, you go, fuck, he's lucky. Or my absolute favorite is, well, yeah, they won the Stanley Cup, but they're never going to win it again. Okay, isn't the whole point to win a Stanley Cup? Like, isn't that the whole point? Like, do players actually on the ice while, Tampa Bay's dancing and celebrating? You think Jamie Benn stays out on the ice and goes, enjoy this, you're never going to win it again? To which Tampa could go, how many do you have, Jamie? Shut up, that's how many I have. Just shut up. You're never going to win it again. So I'm not sure why you guys are so happy over winning the Stanley Cup. It's never going to happen again. It's so weird. So the last one to me, owner, right? So if you have a good GM, the owner can make things look better or worse. Where you can say, well, I like what the GM's doing. He's got a good symbiotic relationship with the owner, and things are going pretty well. Now people are going to look up symbiotic, and everything's going pretty well for them. Bad GM, that's where the owner thing becomes something interesting. You could either have that the owner has installed this really bad GM, the owner's running this team into the ground. The owner is saving the bad GM from himself. Because the bad GM wants to rebuild and he's saying no, or vice versa. The bad GM, thinks they're really good, but the owner's telling him no. And again, the owner seems to obscure the view of how we feel that a GM's doing. I'll use Pierre Dorion in Ottawa as an example. Now, there are a lot of people that don't like the job done by Eugene Melnyk, right? And this has been common for years. People have felt this way. But it's interesting because I think it does give Pierre Dorion some cover when it comes to coverage of the Ottawa Senators. Because when he sells players off, we go, well, yeah, the owner won't pay for them. And then when he brings in players and when the team's not doing very well, we go, well, yeah, but the owner's cheap. And so he's kind of insulated from bad results. And where I think if you had an owner that was more popular in Ottawa, I don't know that would necessarily be the case. But again, it seems to color that view of good GM, bad GM. I do think that Steve Yzerman's probably the best GM in hockey. I do. But I think Lou Lamoriello is one of the best GMs in hockey as well. But when we get into, well, who's the worst? Well, see, I would have told you Joe Sakic 4 years ago. I would have said Mark Bergevin at times as well. There's a reason I stopped even saying bad GMs, because I think it's a bad take. It doesn't age well. And what I find strange, and again, because I'm closest to Vancouver and I see it all the time, is no matter how well the team does, if you believe that the GM is bad, nothing will change that opinion. If you like him, then you will argue in favor of the bad moves he's made and why he made them. And I think it translates, again, to all NHL teams. And I think it works in other sports too. I would imagine most of these things, other than goaltending, most of these things would translate to football, to baseball, to any sport you want to imagine in North America or around the world. And it has to be the most difficult job. This is why we would say, oh, hey, Shannon, I bet you'd love to be the GM of whatever team. No, I would hate it. I would not want that job. That is not a job I would ever want, because you are always under a microscope. You are potentially fired. It's almost as tough a job as coaching. Coaching, you can be fired weeks after a GM or an owner will say, I have full faith in him. And then 3 weeks later, I never met him. I have no idea who he is. I don't know how he got in the building. We turned off his key card. He's out of here. I have no idea. He just stood behind the bench. We have no idea where he came from. So really it is a thankless job, and it's strange because I see people on the internet who hate Stan Bowman. There's an example of one right there, right? And yet Bowman, there's been some good things he's done with Chicago. I understand there's moves they don't like that he's made, but it is interesting to me to see that difference, and especially when you look at the amount of success Chicago had. But there will be people who will say, well, yeah, they had that success, but it has nothing to do with Bowman. So it is a bizarre opposition, I guess, best way I could put it. That difference of opinion between what is a good GM and what is a bad GM. Because again, it all depends on how you feel about them from the start. Or there's a move made that you go, this is such a ridiculously bad move, or this is such a great move, that you fall into the category of good or bad. So, good GM, bad GM. Go. Best GM in hockey, worst GM in hockey. This can't go wrong. This can't be a comment section that potentially goes wrong. But I'd be interested to know what you guys think, because again, if we look at the record, if we look at the team's records, if we look at how teams are doing, very often the GM that people say is one of the worst won't necessarily be running the worst team, but you'll have excuses for why that's the case. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. This is something I've wanted to do a video on for a long time, so I'm doing it now. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.